The notification sound from my phone cut through the silence of my home office like a blade. Another email. I'd been getting them all morning. Work stuff mostly. A few spam messages. The usual digital noise that fills our lives. But this one was different. The sender's name made my stomach drop. Monitor app. Motion detection alert. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Sarah was supposed to be at her book club meeting. Had been going every Tuesday for the past 6 months, religiously. Never missed one. But there it was. Motion detected in our bedroom at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. My finger hovered over the notification. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it. The other part, the part that had been growing increasingly suspicious over the past few weeks, needed to know. I installed the security system 3 months ago after our neighbor's house got broken into. Sarah had been enthusiastic about it, even helped me pick out the cameras. It'll make me feel safer when you're traveling for work, she'd said, kissing my cheek as we browsed through the options online. The irony wasn't lost on me now. I opened the app with trembling fingers. The live feed showed our bedroom, empty now, but the recorded footage was there, waiting. I rewound to 2:47 p.m. and pressed play. The bedroom door opened, and Sarah walked in. But she wasn't alone. Behind her came a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the kind of easy confidence that I'd lost somewhere along the way. They were laughing about something, her hand on his chest in a gesture so intimate it made my breath catch. I watched, paralyzed, as my wife of 12 years sat on our bed and patted the space beside her. The stranger, because that's what he was to me, a complete stranger in my home, in my bedroom, sat down without hesitation. Their conversation was animated, comfortable. Too comfortable. Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same gesture she'd made on our first date when she was nervous but excited. I remembered that day clearly. We'd met at a coffee shop downtown, and she'd done that exact same thing when I asked if she wanted to see a movie sometime. The stranger leaned closer, and Sarah didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head toward him, and they kissed. I dropped my phone. It clattered onto my desk, the screen going black, but the image was burned into my retinas. My wife kissing another man in our bedroom, on our bed, under the watchful eye of the security camera I'd installed to protect our home. The silence in my office was deafening. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's lawnmower, the distant sound of traffic, life continuing as normal while mine fell apart in real time. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and forced myself to watch the rest. They talked for another 20 minutes, their body language growing more intimate by the moment. His hand on her knee, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm. The casual touches of people who knew each other well, who had done this before. Finally, they left the bedroom together, and the camera showed nothing but an empty room and a rumpled bedspread. I checked the timestamp again. 2:47 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. Sarah's book club didn't end until 4:30, and she never got home before 5, which meant she had plenty of time to bring someone into our house, into our bedroom, and I would never have known if not for a random motion alert. My hands were still shaking as I scrolled through the app's history. The motion alerts went back weeks. How had I missed them? But I knew the answer. I'd been so focused on work, so trusting, so oblivious. The alerts came on Tuesdays, always during her book club meetings. Sometimes Thursdays too, when she claimed to be running errands. I opened the alert from last Tuesday. Same scenario, different clothes. The Tuesday before that, there they were again, my wife and this stranger, in my home, making themselves comfortable while I was none the wiser. The front door opened downstairs, and I heard Sarah's voice call out, "Honey, I'm home." I quickly closed the app and tried to compose myself. My reflection in the computer screen showed a pale, hollow-eyed man who looked like he'd seen a ghost. In a way, I had. The ghost of my marriage. "How was book club?" I called back, my voice sounding strangely normal. "Oh, you know how it is," Sarah replied, her footsteps on the stairs. Mary went on and on about the ending again. I thought we'd never get out of there. She appeared in my office doorway, looking perfectly normal. Same blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, same blue eyes that had captivated me since college, same easy smile. But now, everything about her seemed like a performance. "What are you working on?" she asked, moving to peer over my shoulder at my computer screen. "Just some client reports," I lied, minimizing the window. "Nothing exciting." She kissed the top of my head, the same casual affection she'd shown me for years. But now it felt like betrayal, knowing where those lips had been just hours before. "I'm going to start dinner," she said. "Thai sound good?" "Perfect," I managed. She lingered for a moment, and I wondered if she could sense something was wrong. But then she smiled and headed back downstairs, humming softly to herself. I sat alone in my office, staring at my phone, trying to process what I'd discovered. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never suspected a thing. We'd met in college, dated for 4 years before getting married. Sarah had been my first serious relationship, and I'd always assumed I was hers too. We'd built a life together, bought this house, talked about having kids someday, made plans for the future, and now I discovered she was living a double life, bringing another man into our home while I was at work, lying about book clubs and errands with the skill of a professional con artist. The smell of cooking drifted up from the kitchen, and I could hear Sarah moving around downstairs, preparing dinner like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just shattered our marriage without even knowing it. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. Confronting her immediately felt wrong. I was too emotional, too shocked. But I also couldn't pretend everything was normal, not when I had video evidence of her infidelity saved on my phone. "Dinner's ready," Sarah called from downstairs. I took a deep breath and headed down to the kitchen. Sarah had set the table with our good plates, lit a candle, even opened a bottle of wine. It looked like a romantic dinner for two, and under any other circumstances it would have been perfect. "This looks amazing," I said, sitting down across from her. "I thought we could use a nice evening together," she replied, raising her wine glass. "We've both been so busy lately." I clinked my glass against hers, the sound sharp and hollow. "To us," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "To us," she echoed, taking a sip of wine. We ate in relative silence, making small talk about work and weekend plans. Sarah seemed relaxed, happy even. She told me about her day, the book club meeting, the grocery store, stopping by her sister's house to drop off a borrowed book. All lies, delivered with the same casual ease she used to tell me about the weather. "You're quiet tonight," she observed, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Everything okay?" Her fingers were warm against mine, and for a moment, I almost convinced myself that what I'd seen was some kind of mistake. That there was an innocent explanation for a strange man in our bedroom, for the way they'd kissed, for the weeks of secret meetings, but the evidence was there, stored in digital permanence on my phone. "Just tired," I said, forcing a smile. "Long day." "Maybe we should go to bed early tonight," she suggested, her tone carrying a hint of suggestion that made my stomach turn. "Maybe," I replied, though I had no intention of sharing a bed with her. "Not tonight. Not until I figured out what to do." After dinner, we settled on the couch to watch television. Sarah curled up against me, her head on my shoulder, just like she had thousands of times before. But now her touch felt foreign, contaminated by the knowledge of her betrayal. The show played on the screen, but I wasn't watching. Instead, I was thinking about the man in our bedroom, wondering who he was, how long this had been going on, what Sarah saw in him that she didn't see in me. I was also thinking about practical matters, lawyers, divorce proceedings, dividing assets. The house was in both our names, and we had joint bank accounts, shared credit cards, a life intertwined in countless legal and financial ways. I love you, Sarah murmured against my shoulder, the words hitting me like a physical blow. I love you too, I replied automatically, the lie coming easier than I expected. She fell asleep against me sometime during the second episode, her breathing deep and even. I stayed still, not wanting to wake her, but also unable to move. This woman who had been my partner, my best friend, my future, was now a stranger. Someone capable of elaborate deception, of bringing another man into our home, of looking me in the eye and lying without a trace of guilt. Eventually, I gently extricated myself from the couch and carried her upstairs to our bedroom. She stirred slightly as I laid her on the bed, but didn't wake up. I covered her with a blanket and stood there for a moment, looking at her peaceful face in the dim light from the hallway. Tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do with this knowledge. But tonight, I needed time to process, to grieve the end of my marriage before it was officially over. I went to the guest room and lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and wondering how I'd missed the signs. Had there been signs? Looking back, I could see moments that might have been clues. Late meetings, new clothes, a different perfume. But at the time, they'd seemed innocent, explainable. Sarah's phone had been password protected for months, something that hadn't bothered me before. She'd been more concerned about her appearance lately, spending more time at the gym, buying new underwear. Small changes that I'd attributed to a natural desire to feel good about herself. Now I wondered if she'd been preparing for someone else. The next morning, Sarah was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter explained that she'd had to go in early for a department meeting. Another lie, probably, but I was almost grateful for the solitude. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my phone, scrolling through the security footage from the past month. The pattern was clear: Tuesday afternoons and occasional Thursdays. Always when I was at work, always when she claimed to be somewhere else. I screenshotted the most incriminating images and saved the video files to my cloud storage. Evidence, in case I needed it later. Then I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called a divorce attorney. Peterson, Wright & Associates, the receptionist answered. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Of course. What type of case? Divorce, I said, the word feeling strange in my mouth. I can get you in with Mr. Peterson this afternoon at 3. Will that work? Perfect. I hung up and immediately felt guilty, like I was the one betraying our marriage. But the evidence was clear, and I needed to understand my options. The law office was downtown, in a building I'd passed countless times but never entered. The waiting room was tastefully decorated with neutral colors and generic art, the kind of place designed to be calming in the midst of personal crisis. Mr. Davidson? A man in his 50s emerged from an office, extending his hand. I'm James Peterson. His handshake was firm, professional, and his office was lined with law books and certificates. He gestured for me to sit in a leather chair across from his desk. So, what brings you here today? He asked, his tone gentle but direct. I told him everything: the security system, the motion alerts, the footage of Sarah with another man. Peterson listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad. Do you have the footage with you? He asked when I finished. I showed him the saved videos on my phone. He watched them impassively, his expression giving nothing away. This is solid evidence of adultery, he said finally. In this state, that can be grounds for an at-fault divorce, which could affect property division and spousal support. What does that mean exactly? Peterson leaned back in his chair. It means your wife's infidelity could work in your favor financially. You might be entitled to a larger share of marital assets, and she might not be eligible for alimony. I don't want to destroy her, I said, surprising myself with the admission. I just want out. I understand, but you need to protect yourself. Have you confronted her yet? No, I only found out yesterday. Good. Don't say anything yet. We need to do some preparation first. Document all your assets, secure your finances, make sure you have copies of important documents. He handed me a checklist of items to gather: bank statements, tax returns, insurance policies, mortgage documents. The paperwork of a life built together, soon to be divided and distributed. How long does this process typically take? I asked. Depends on whether it's contested or not. If your wife agrees to the divorce and you can settle on terms amicably, it could be as quick as a few months. If she fights it, he shrugged, could be a year or more. I left the law office with a folder full of information and a retainer agreement to sign. My head was spinning with terms like equitable distribution and custody arrangements, though we didn't have children, thankfully. On the drive home, I called my brother Mark. We weren't particularly close, but he'd gone through a messy divorce 5 years earlier and might have some insight. "Hey, stranger," he said when he answered. "What's up?" "I need some advice," I said. "About Sarah." There was a pause. "What kind of advice?" "The kind you're probably familiar with." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh man, I'm sorry. What happened?" I gave him the abbreviated version, and he listened without judgment. "First piece of advice," he said when I finished. "Don't do anything stupid. Don't confront her when you're angry. Don't move out of the house and don't stop paying the bills. You'll need to show you're the stable one." "I can barely look at her, Mark. How am I supposed to act normal?" "You fake it until you can't anymore. But you do this right, or she'll take you to the cleaners." "Did you see it coming? With Jennifer, I mean." Mark was quiet for a long moment. "Looking back, yeah. But at the time, I was too proud to admit my marriage was falling apart." "You're ahead of the game. You have proof." "It doesn't feel like I'm ahead of anything." "I know, but you will be. This part is the worst. The discovery, the decision, the waiting. Once you pull the trigger, at least you're moving forward." That evening, Sarah came home from work in a good mood, chattering about her day as she changed clothes. I watched her from the doorway of our bedroom, noting how she avoided eye contact with the security camera. "Want to go out for dinner?" she asked, pulling on a sweater. "I'm too tired to cook." "Sure," I said, though food was the last thing on my mind. We went to Romano's, an Italian place we'd been going to for years. The hostess knew us by name, and the waiter brought our usual drinks without being asked. It was our life in microcosm, comfortable, predictable, built on years of shared experiences. "You seem distant lately," Sarah said over her pasta. "Is everything okay at work?" "Just busy," I replied, cutting my chicken with more force than necessary. "Maybe we should take a vacation soon. We haven't been anywhere in months." The irony was stunning. She was planning vacations while conducting an affair, making future plans while destroying our present. "Where would you want to go?" I asked, genuinely curious about how her mind worked. "Somewhere warm, maybe the Caribbean. We could use some sun." I nodded and made appropriate responses, all the while thinking about how this would be our last dinner together as a married couple, even though she didn't know it yet. Back home, Sarah suggested watching a movie, but I begged off, claiming I had work to catch up on. Instead, I spent the evening in my office, reviewing the checklist Peterson had given me and gathering financial documents. Our bank statements painted a picture of a comfortable middle-class life. Mortgage payments, car loans, credit card bills, regular deposits from our jobs. Nothing unusual, no unexplained expenses that might indicate an affair. But as I dug deeper, I found small discrepancies. Cash withdrawals that seemed random, restaurant charges when she claimed to be at book club, gas purchases at stations near hotels across town. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight, if you knew what to look for. I copied everything to a secure folder on my laptop and created backups on multiple cloud services. Peterson had stressed the importance of documentation, and I was determined to be thorough, Over the next few days, I fell into a strange routine of normalcy, overlaid with deception. I went to work, came home, had dinner with Sarah, watched television, made small talk about our days. All the while, I was gathering evidence, documenting assets, and preparing for the end of our marriage. Sarah seemed oblivious to any change in my behavior. If anything, she was more affectionate than usual, initiating physical contact and suggesting romantic activities. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. How could she be planning an affair and a Caribbean vacation simultaneously? On Friday evening, as we were having drinks before dinner, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and quickly put the phone face down on the table. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Just my sister," she replied without missing a beat. "She wants to know if we're coming to dinner Sunday." But I'd seen enough of the message preview to know it wasn't from her sister. The sender was listed as D, and the message started with, "Can't wait to see you." "I didn't know we had plans with your sister," I said. Sarah picked up her phone and typed a quick response. "We don't. She's just being optimistic." Another lie, delivered with the same casual ease as all the others. That night, I lay awake listening to Sarah's peaceful breathing and wondering who D was. Her lover had a name now, an initial at least. It made him more real, more threatening. I also wondered what the message had said in full. "Can't wait to see you." What? Tomorrow? Tonight? At their next secret meeting? The questions tormented me, but I knew I couldn't ask them directly. Not yet. I needed to be smart about this, strategic. One wrong move and she might become suspicious, might start covering her tracks more carefully. Saturday morning, Sarah announced she was going shopping with her friend Lisa. Another lie, I assumed, but I simply nodded and said I'd be working on the lawn. After she left, I checked the security footage from the previous Tuesday. There they were again, Dee and my wife, in our bedroom, looking more comfortable and intimate than ever. I forwarded the video to Peterson with a brief email. More evidence from this week. His response was quick. Document everything. We'll discuss strategy Monday. The weekend dragged by with excruciating slowness. Sarah was her usual self, attentive, affectionate, making plans for the future. I played my part, but the strain was beginning to show. I found myself snapping at small things, being short in my responses, struggling to maintain the facade of a happy husband. Sunday evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Sarah surprised me. "I've been thinking," she said, brushing her teeth at the bathroom sink. "Maybe we should start trying to have a baby." I almost dropped my toothbrush. "What?" "I know we've talked about waiting, but I'm not getting any younger. And things are going so well with us right now." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She was suggesting we bring a child into our marriage while actively destroying it with her affair. "That's a big decision," I managed. "Maybe we should talk about it more." "Of course," she said, rinsing her mouth. "I just wanted to put it out there." She kissed my cheek and headed to bed, leaving me standing in the bathroom, reeling from her suggestion. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living this lie, gathering evidence while she made plans for our non-existent future. I would confront her soon, but I needed one more piece of information first. I needed to know who Dee was. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and followed Sarah to her office. She worked at a marketing firm downtown, and I knew her schedule well enough to know she usually grabbed coffee at 10 a.m. from the shop next door. I positioned myself across the street and waited. Sure enough, at 10:05, Sarah emerged from her building and walked into the coffee shop. Alone. She came out 5 minutes later with her usual order, large latte, extra shot, and headed back to work. Nothing suspicious, no secret meetings. But as I was about to leave, a man approached her on the sidewalk. Tall, dark-haired, the same build as the stranger from our bedroom. They talked for a few minutes, their body language familiar and intimate. He touched her arm when he spoke, and she laughed at something he said. Then he kissed her cheek and walked away. I followed him at a distance, my heart pounding. He got into a silver BMW parked 2 blocks away and drove off before I could get the license plate number. But I'd seen enough. The mystery man had a face now, a real presence in the world. He wasn't just a figure on a security camera anymore. He was a flesh and blood person who was sleeping with my wife. That evening, I asked Sarah how her day was, fishing for any mention of the encounter. "Same old routine," she said, stirring pasta sauce at the stove. "Meetings, emails, the usual excitement." "See anyone interesting?" She glanced at me curiously. "What do you mean?" "Just wondering if anything broke up the monotony." "Not really. Why?" "No reason, just making conversation." But she kept looking at me strangely throughout dinner, and I realized I was pushing too hard. I needed to be more careful, more subtle. That night, as Sarah slept beside me, I made my final decision. I would confront her Tuesday, after her fake book club meeting, after she brought D into our home one more time. I would have my evidence, and I would end this charade once and for all. Tuesday arrived gray and overcast, matching my mood. Sarah left for work in good spirits, humming as she gathered her things. "Book club tonight," she reminded me, kissing my cheek. "Don't wait up." "Have fun," I said, the words sticking in my throat. I went to work but couldn't concentrate on anything. Every email, every phone call felt surreal and pointless. My life was about to change dramatically, and here I was pretending to care about quarterly reports and client presentations. At 2:30, I made an excuse and left the office. I wanted to be home before the motion alert started, wanted to watch in real time as my marriage officially ended. I sat in my office with the security app open, waiting. At 2:45, the first alert came through. Motion detected in the living room. Sarah's car pulling into the driveway, followed by a silver BMW. They entered the house together, talking and laughing. The living room camera caught them briefly as they passed through, heading upstairs. Sarah's hand was on his back, a gesture of casual intimacy that made my chest tight. The bedroom camera activated at 2:52. There was Sarah, leading a man into our bedroom, our sacred space, our marriage bed. I watched them sit on the edge of the bed talking intently. Their conversation seemed more serious this time, less playful than in previous recordings. He took her hands in his, and she leaned against his shoulder. Then they kissed, and I closed the app. I'd seen enough. More than enough. I sat in my office, staring at the wall, feeling numb. It was over. All of it. The marriage, the shared future, the life we'd built together. In a few hours, I would confront Sarah, and everything would change forever. The waiting was agony. I tried to read, to work, to distract myself, but nothing worked. The knowledge that my wife was upstairs with another man, in our bed, while I sat helplessly in my office, was eating me alive. At 3:20, my phone buzzed with another alert. Motion in the living room. They were leaving. I watched from my office window as they emerged from the house. The man, tall, confident, comfortable in my space, walked Sarah to her car. They talked for a few more minutes, then kissed goodbye. He got in his BMW and drove away. Sarah sat in her car for a moment, checking her appearance in the rearview mirror, then drove off in the opposite direction. Probably to establish an alibi, I realized. She'd go somewhere public, maybe actually stop by the bookstore, so she could tell me truthfully about part of her evening. The sophistication of her deception was staggering. I went upstairs to our bedroom. The bed was made, the pillows fluffed, everything back in its proper place. But I could smell his cologne, faint but unmistakable. Another man's scent in my bedroom, in my marriage. I stripped the bedding and threw it in the washing machine, then took a long shower, trying to scrub away the knowledge of what had happened in this house, in this room. At 5:30, Sarah's car pulled into the driveway. I was in the kitchen pretending to read the newspaper when she came through the front door. "Hey, honey," she called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "How was your day?" "Fine," I replied, not looking up from the paper. "How was book club?" "Oh, you know Mary. She had theories about the symbolism in chapter 12. We debated it for an hour." She moved around the kitchen, putting her purse away, getting a glass of water, the picture of innocent domesticity. "What book are you reading?" I asked. "The one I told you about last week," she said. "The historical fiction novel. I can't remember the exact title." She looked at me more closely. "Are you okay? You seem off." "Just tired. Maybe we should order takeout tonight. I'm exhausted from all that literary analysis." "Actually," I said, folding the newspaper and looking directly at her, "we need to talk." Something in my tone must have alerted her because her expression changed, became more guarded. "Okay," she said slowly. "What about?" "About where you really were this afternoon." The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. "What do you mean? I told you, book club." "Sarah, I know about him." She stared at me for a long moment, her mind clearly racing. "Know about who?" "The man you've been bringing into our house, into our bedroom, while I'm at work." Her mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The security cameras," I said simply. Understanding dawned on her face, followed by panic, then resignation. She sank into a chair across from me, her hands shaking. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Since last Tuesday. I've been watching you lie to me for a week." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen. Multiple times. For weeks, maybe months." "Yes," she whispered. "Who is he?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "His name is David. We work together." "How long?" 6 months. It started at the company retreat in March. 6 months. Half a year of deception, of bringing another man into our home, of lying to my face every single day. "Do you love him?" I asked. The question hung in the air between us. Sarah looked at me with red, swollen eyes, and I could see the answer before she spoke. "Yes," she said. "I do." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd known they were coming. Hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that watching security footage never could. "And us?" I asked. "Do you love me?" I thought I did. I wanted to. But this thing with David, it's different. It's intense and passionate and everything I thought was missing from our marriage. So our 12 years together meant nothing? No, that's not what I'm saying. We had good years, really good years. But we grew apart, became comfortable, stopped trying. With David, I feel alive again. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at our backyard, at the life we'd built together, the swing set we'd installed for the children we might have someday, the garden Sarah had planted last spring, the deck where we'd hosted countless barbecues with friends. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I've been trying to figure that out for months." "You've been planning to leave me for months?" "Not planning exactly, but thinking about it. This situation isn't fair to any of us." I turned back to face her. "You're right. It's not fair. Which is why I filed for divorce this morning." Her eyes widened. "You what?" "I saw a lawyer yesterday. The papers will be served tomorrow." "But we haven't even talked about this. Maybe we can work it out, go to counseling." "Sarah, you just told me you love another man. You've been having an affair for 6 months. What exactly is there to work out?" She was crying harder now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "I made a mistake. I was confused, scared about getting older, about our marriage becoming boring. But I still care about you, about us." Caring about me doesn't stop you from sleeping with David in our bed. That was wrong. I know it was wrong. But people make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, I interrupted. Mistakes are accidental. This was a choice. Multiple choices made repeatedly over months. Please, she said, reaching for my hand. Don't do this. We can fix this. I pulled my hand away. No, we can't. I could never trust you again. Every time you're 5 minutes late, every time your phone buzzes, every time you say you're going somewhere, I'll wonder if you're lying. That's no way to live. So that's it? 12 years and you're just throwing it away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. She sat in silence for a while, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she looked up at me. What about the house? My lawyer will handle the details. I'll sleep in the guest room until we figure out living arrangements. And David? What about him? Are you going to tell his wife? I stared at her. He's married? Yes, she said quietly. 2 kids. The hits just kept coming. Not only was my wife having an affair, she was helping destroy another family in the process. Jesus, Sarah, do you hear yourself? You're wrecking 2 marriages, hurting 4 people, potentially traumatizing children. For what? Because our marriage got boring? It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You made selfish choices that hurt innocent people. What are you going to do about David's wife? I thought about it for a moment. Some stranger, somewhere in the city, living the same lie I'd been living. Probably making dinner for her family right now, unaware that her husband was destroying their marriage. I don't know yet, I said honestly. The rest of the evening passed in tense silence. Sarah made some calls, to her sister I assumed, and probably to David. I stayed in my office reviewing documents for my lawyer and trying to process the surreal reality of my situation. We slept in separate rooms for the first time in our marriage. The next morning, Sarah was gone when I woke up. She'd left a note saying she was staying at her sister's house for a few days to give us both space to think. At 10:30 a.m., a process server arrived at my office with divorce papers for Sarah. I called Peterson to confirm they'd been delivered. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm fine, I lied. What happens next? She has 30 days to respond. Her attorney will probably contact me within the week to discuss terms. She'll get a lawyer? She'd be foolish not to. Even if she doesn't contest the divorce, she needs someone to protect her interest in the property settlement. And the adultery evidence? It's solid. Should work in your favor for asset division, assuming she doesn't try to claim the marriage was already irretrievably broken. What does that mean? If she can prove the marriage was over before the affair started, the adultery becomes less relevant. But given that you have 6 months of documented infidelity, that would be a hard case for her to make. I spent the rest of the week in a strange limbo. The house felt enormous and empty without Sarah, but also peaceful. I could think clearly for the first time in months, could make decisions without considering her reactions, or maintaining the exhausting pretense of marital harmony. I also did something I'd been putting off. I researched David's last name using Sarah's work directory and found his address. According to public records, he lived in a suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes away with his wife and 2 young children. I drove by his house one evening, not really sure what I was looking for. It was a nice place, bigger than ours, with a minivan in the driveway and children's toys scattered across the front yard. Normal. Innocent. The front windows were lit, and I could see figures moving around inside. A family having dinner, living their lives, unaware that the father was systematically destroying everything they'd built together. I didn't stop, didn't get out of the car. I just drove home, feeling sick about the collateral damage Sarah and David were causing. On Friday, Peterson called with news. Sarah's retained counsel, he said. Attorney named Rebecca Martinez. I know her. She's good, but reasonable. This might not be as contentious as it could be. That's good news? It's better than if she'd hired one of the sharks downtown. Martinez prefers negotiation to warfare. When will we hear from her? Soon. Martinez will want to review the evidence and discuss options with Sarah. I'd expect contact early next week. That weekend, I started the process of disentangling our shared life. I opened a new bank account, redirected my paycheck, and began separating our belongings. It was tedious, depressing work, deciding who got which books, which kitchen appliances, which photographs from our life together. I also changed the locks on the house. Sarah had a key, and I didn't want any surprise visits, especially if she decided to bring David around again. On Sunday evening, she called. I want to come get some clothes, she said without preamble. When? Tomorrow, after work. Is that okay? I'll make sure I'm not here. You don't have to leave. We're adults. We can be civil. I'd prefer not to see you right now. There was a long pause. I understand. Sarah? Yes? Don't bring him with you. Another pause. I wouldn't do that. But she had already done that multiple times, so her assurances meant nothing. Monday evening, I went to a movie while Sarah collected her things. When I came home, several closets and drawers were noticeably emptier, and her personal items had been removed from the bathroom. The house felt more like mine now, but also more lonely. Tuesday brought the call I'd been expecting. This is Rebecca Martinez, the voice said when I answered my phone. I represent Sarah Davidson in your divorce proceedings. Okay. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you and your attorney to discuss settlement terms. Are you available Thursday afternoon? I'll have to check with Peterson. Good. I'll call him to coordinate. Ms. Martinez? Yes? Is Sarah going to contest the divorce? We're still discussing options, but my sense is that she wants to reach an amicable agreement. Because of the adultery evidence? Among other factors, yes. Thursday's meeting was held in a sterile conference room at Peterson's law firm. Sarah was there with Martinez, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s who radiated competence. Sarah looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She avoided making eye contact with me. Let's start with the basics, Martinez said, opening a file. Both parties want to dissolve the marriage. The question is terms. Peterson laid out our position. I would keep the house in exchange for taking over the mortgage. We would split retirement accounts and investments equally, and Sarah would get her car and personal belongings. What about spousal support? Martinez asked. Given the circumstances of the marriage's end, we don't believe spousal support is appropriate, Peterson replied. Martinez looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly. My client is willing to waive spousal support, Martinez said, but she'd like to keep some of the furniture and household items. That's reasonable, Peterson agreed. The meeting lasted 2 hours, covering every aspect of our shared life in cold, legal terms. It was surreal, reducing 12 years of marriage to bullet points and dollar amounts. There is one other matter, Martinez said as we were wrapping up. My client would like to request that the details of the marriage's end remain confidential. Peterson looked at me. What does that mean exactly? She's asking that you not share information about the affair with third parties, specifically with the other man's family. So David's wife was still in the dark. I thought about that house I'd driven by, those children playing in the yard, the woman inside who had no idea her marriage was over. I haven't made any decisions about that, I said. It would be appreciated, Martinez said carefully, if you could respect the privacy of all parties involved. I'll consider it, was all I said. After they left, Peterson and I reviewed the proposed settlement terms. It's fair, he said. More than fair, actually. She's essentially admitting fault by not asking for spousal support or a larger share of assets. What about the confidentiality request? That's entirely up to you. You have no legal obligation to keep quiet about the affair. But if you tell the other man's wife, You open yourself up to potential complications. What if she decides to sue for alienation of affection? What if it gets messy and ugly? I can't just let her live a lie. That's not your responsibility. Isn't it? If I were in her position, I'd want to know. Peterson shrugged. It's a personal decision. From a legal standpoint, my advice is to stay out of it. I went home that evening with more questions than answers. The divorce was proceeding smoothly, faster than I'd expected. But the moral questions were harder to resolve. That night, I made a decision. I looked up David's wife online. Her name was Jennifer, and she worked as a teacher at an elementary school. She had a Facebook page full of family photos and cheerful posts about her children's activities. She looked happy, innocent, unaware. I wrote her a letter. Dear Jennifer, it began, you don't know me, but I believe you deserve to know some information about your husband David. I explained everything, the affair, the evidence, the timeline. I included copies of the most damning photographs from the security footage, along with timestamps proving the dates and duration of their meetings. I'm not writing this to hurt you, I concluded, but because I believe you have the right to know the truth about your marriage, just as I wish someone had told me sooner. I addressed the envelope to her school, figuring it was safer than sending it to her home where David might intercept it. The next morning, I mailed the letter. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Is this the person who sent me the letter? A woman's voice asked. Yes, I said. This is Jennifer, David's wife. We need to talk. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop across town, neutral territory where we wouldn't be recognized. Jennifer was smaller than I'd expected, with short brown hair and tired eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Is it all true? She asked without preamble, sliding into the booth across from me. Yes, I have video evidence if you need to see it. She shook her head. The photos were enough. I confronted David last night. What did he say? He admitted everything. Said it started as a friendship that got out of hand, that he was planning to end it but didn't know how. Do you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. 6 months. He's been lying to me for 6 months, missing our daughter's school plays and our son's baseball games for meetings with your wife. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm grateful you told me. I was starting to think I was going crazy. All the late nights, the phone calls he wouldn't explain, the distance between us. At least now I know I wasn't imagining things. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. He wants to try counseling. Says he'll do whatever it takes to save our marriage. But I can't even look at him right now. Are you getting a lawyer? Already called one. I need to protect my kids, financially and emotionally. We talked for another hour, sharing war stories from our respective betrayals. It was strangely comforting to talk to someone who understood exactly what I was going through. Thank you for telling me, she said as we prepared to leave. It took courage. You would have found out eventually. Maybe, but this way, I can make informed decisions instead of living in ignorance. 2 weeks later, Peterson called with news that the divorce settlement had been finalized. Sarah had signed all the papers, and the court date was set for the following month. It's basically a formality at this point, he said. You'll be officially divorced in 30 days. That's it? That's it. You're free to move on with your life. Moving on turned out to be harder than I expected. The house felt too big, too full of memories. I considered selling it, but the market was soft, and I'd already invested so much in making it ours, mine, now. Instead, I started making changes. I repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture, rearranged everything to erase the traces of our shared life. It helped, a little. I also started dating again, though tentatively. The idea of trusting someone new, of making myself vulnerable to that kind of betrayal again, was terrifying. But slowly, gradually, I began to rebuild. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She looked good, healthier, happier than she had during our final months together. She was wearing a ring I didn't recognize. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "Hi. How are you?" "Good. You?" "Good. Really good, actually." We stood there for a moment. Two people who had once shared everything, now reduced to polite small talk in the cereal aisle. "I heard about David's divorce," I said. Her expression tightened. "Yes. That was difficult. Are you two?" "We're engaged," she said quietly. "We're getting married next month." I felt a pang of something. Not jealousy, exactly, but a kind of melancholy for what might have been. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. "Thank you. And I'm sorry for everything that happened. I know I hurt you badly." "You did. But I'm okay now." "I'm glad." She started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I never stopped caring about you. The affair wasn't about not loving you. It was about feeling like I was disappearing in our marriage, like I'd lost myself somewhere along the way." "I understand," I said. "I hope you're happy." "I am. And I hope you find happiness too." After she left, I stood in the grocery store, thinking about forgiveness and moving forward and the strange paths life takes us down. I had found happiness in small ways. A new job that challenged me, friends who supported me through the transition, hobbies I'd neglected during marriage. I was even seeing someone, a woman named Kate, who made me laugh and who had her own complicated history with trust and relationships. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. A year later, I received a Christmas card from Jennifer. She'd remarried, a fellow teacher who adored her children and treated them like his own. The photo showed a blended family, everyone smiling and genuinely happy. "Thank you again for your honesty," she'd written inside. "It changed my life for the better." I put the card on my mantle next to others from friends and family, a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing, even when it's painful, leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. The security system still monitored my house, but now it was just for protection, not surveillance. The cameras watched empty rooms and quiet hallways, exactly as they were supposed to. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the man I'd been before that Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a motion detection alert. He seemed like a stranger now, naive, trusting, oblivious to the cracks in his own foundation. I wasn't that man anymore. I was someone harder, perhaps, but also more honest. I knew what betrayal looked like, how it sounded, how it felt. But I also knew I could survive it, could rebuild from the wreckage, could trust again when the right person came along. The monitor had shown me the truth, painful as it was. And the truth, as they say, had set me free. 2 years after my divorce, I was cleaning out my home office when I found the folder of evidence I'd gathered. Screenshots, videos, photographs of Sarah's affair. I'd saved it all, thinking I might need it for legal proceedings that never materialized. Now it just seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. I deleted the digital files and shredded the printouts, feeding them into the machine piece by piece. The evidence of my marriage's end disappeared into confetti, and I felt something release in my chest, the last thread connecting me to that painful chapter. Kate found me there, surrounded by paper scraps. "Spring cleaning?" she asked. "Something like that." She helped me clean up the mess, not asking questions about what I'd been destroying. That was one of the things I loved about her. She understood that everyone had a past, and she respected the boundaries around mine. "Want to get dinner?" she asked when we finished. "Always," I said, meaning it. We left the office together, stepping into the rest of our lives. Behind us, the security monitor showed an empty room, watching over nothing but possibilities. The motion alerts had stopped being ominous. Now they meant friends arriving for dinner, delivery drivers dropping off packages, neighbors stopping by to chat. Normal life, the kind I'd thought was lost forever but had managed to find again. In the end, the technology that revealed my marriage's lies also protected my future's truths. The cameras that caught Sarah's betrayal now watched over my attempts to build something better, something honest. I had learned to monitor my life not out of suspicion, but out of care. To pay attention to the people I loved, to notice changes and address problems before they became crises. Most importantly, I'd learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt. Not with the same person who broke it, but with someone new, someone worthy of that gift. The monitor still watched, still recorded, still sent alerts when motion was detected. But now I welcomed those notifications because they meant my house was full of life again, full of people who belonged there. And that made all the difference. 3 years after everything fell apart, I was teaching Kate how to use the security system when she made an observation that stopped me cold. "You know," she said, scrolling through the settings on the app, "this would show you everything, wouldn't it? Every time I came and went, everyone I had over when you weren't here." "Yes," I said carefully. "That doesn't bother you? The idea that you could watch me without my knowing it?" I thought about her question, about the man I'd been when I first installed those cameras, about the terrible knowledge they'd brought me. "The cameras are there for security," I said finally. "If I ever felt the need to spy on you, that would mean our relationship was already over." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "Good answer. Besides," I added, "I trust you. And if I'm wrong about that trust, I'd rather know sooner than later." "You're not wrong," she said simply. And I believed her. Not because I was naive, I'd lost that capacity forever, but because I'd learned to read the signs of deception, and Kate showed none of them. Her phone wasn't password protected around me. Her schedule was transparent. Her affection was consistent. More than that, she'd been through her own betrayal and understood the value of radical honesty in a relationship. We talked about everything, our fears, our past mistakes, our hopes for the future. There were no secrets between us because we'd both learned how devastating secrets could be. The security system remained active, watching over our life together. But it was no longer a tool of surveillance. It was just what it was supposed to be from the beginning. Protection for the people and things I cared about most. Sometimes I thought about Sarah, wondered if she was happy in her new marriage, if she'd learned anything from the destruction of our relationship. I hoped she had, for David's sake and for her own. But mostly, I thought about the future, about the woman beside me who made me laugh every day, who challenged me to be better, who trusted me with her own history of heartbreak, about the possibility of children, of growing old together, of building something lasting and true, about second chances and new beginnings, and the strange mercy of getting to start over when you thought your story was finished. The monitor continued its silent watch, recording the ordinary moments of an extraordinary life. A life I'd never planned but couldn't imagine living any other way. In the end, that's what betrayal had taught me. That destruction and creation are often the same process, that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you actually need. I needed honesty. I needed trust. I needed someone who understood that love isn't just passion and romance. It's also choice, commitment, and the daily decision to put your partner's well-being alongside your own. I'd found that someone, and this time, I was paying attention. The cameras rolled on, capturing nothing more dramatic than two people building a life together, one honest moment at a time. And that was exactly the story I wanted them to tell. Years later, when Kate and I were married and expecting our first child, I finally turned off the bedroom camera. Not because I didn't trust her, but because some spaces should be private. Some moments shouldn't be recorded. The other cameras remained, protecting our home and our growing family. But the bedroom became a sanctuary again, a place where only we existed, where the only witness to our love was each other. It was a small change, but it felt significant. A sign that I'd finally moved beyond the wounds of my first marriage and into something entirely new. The monitor still watched over us, but now it was watching over a different kind of story. One built on truth from the very beginning. One that didn't need surveillance to survive. And in that watching, that protection, that quiet vigilance, I found a kind of peace I'd never known I was looking for. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. But this time, I was ready for whatever the cameras might reveal. Because this time, I had nothing to hide. And neither did she. The end.